Hi, class. In this lecture, I will go over part two of Metamorphosis. Essentially, we left off in part one with Gregor's father pretty much kicking him into his room. And we know that at one point, Gregor really used his room as a way to escape his life. And now he's being basically kept in there as a prisoner. There's also the scene in which he's being served bread and milk, which it symbolizes a lot. It's got biblical references, but also represents things like life, love and giving, charity, but also humanness. Gregor is at a point now where he is now losing his human qualities. He can no longer eat human food, and therefore he's starting to accept the fact that he is in fact a bug. um, we also learn that Gregor insisted that he take over the family finances. And he says that he feels a pride in that choice and that he was able to provide his family with this very bourgeois middle class lifestyle. He took on all the finances and the burdens and really prides himself on giving that lifestyle to them. Now, in literature, pride should always be a red flag and set off alarm bells because it's really a trope in literature that signals hubris or a downfall to come. And so if we look back at things like Oedipus Rex, Oedipus's big downfall was his pride. And in history of literature, there's that case comes around a lot. We see this in Nettie Merrill in The Swimmer. We also see this in A Hunger Artist. So once someone has a certain sense of pride in something, pride's not necessarily a bad thing in the normal sense, but in this case, Gregor really wants to have control over his family, over what they are and how they appear to be. He wants to appear to be part of the bourgeoisie. He wants to be middle class. And so in that, Kafka punishes him. While we want to think that Gregor is giving, he does expect something back. He does say that he notices his family does not give him affection and they do not appreciate him. This is before he turned into a bug. And so that tells us that he's not exactly charitable. He is expecting something in return for his giving, and therefore he is, in a sense, selfish. And so, again, we always want to ask ourselves in this novel, did Gregor turn himself into a bug? Did he victimize himself? And in many senses, I think Kafka is pointing to yes, that there comes a point when you give too much of yourself, you want too much control, and therefore you lose yourself, you lose your individuality, and you lose, your sense of living. We also learn that the father has been hoarding money in a little locked box. This is the first time Gregor has heard of this. And it really shocks the reader. I don't know if it shocks Gregor as much, but we should be shocked by it. His father, instead of paying off this debt, is hoarding the money. And so there's a little bit of greed in that, although maybe the father's afraid of what might happen if Gregor messes up. We don't know, but that is a little thing that we learn. We also learn that Gregor uses the word incarcerated, which is interesting because, like I said before, he at first finds his room as this place of solace, this place to kind of hide himself away and protect himself from the outside world and all of the stresses, and yet he is now incarcerated in that room. He's now being kept prisoner there. And so he's also trapped within himself in his own body, right? Because he is transformed. Kafka may also be punishing him for not fighting this transformation. Again, like he's accepted the state of self, and so now he's being punished for that. Another interesting element of part two is his sister Greet. We learn that she's an artist, that she's a violinist. And in many ways, people hypothesize that Greet is Kafka, that Kafka wrote himself into the story as a Greet, because we know that on the side, Kafka was an artist, very secretly, but he was one. And it's also, I would even consider it a coming of age story for Greet. And as you're going to see in part three, the story ends with her. She really is the protagonist. And so it's kind of interesting to think of the story as, possibly Greet as the alter ego of Gregor. Okay, thanks guys.